All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our webinar. My name is Andy Posner. I'm the founder and CEO of Capital Good Fund, and I'm pleased to have the opportunity to do a virtual kickoff for our expansion into Texas. It's unfortunate that we can't do it in person due to the pandemic, but we have a really great lineup of speakers, and I look forward to sharing a little bit more about our work and why we're in Texas and what we're doing. But first, I want to introduce Congressman Henry Cuellar. He's a Democrat who represents the 28th District of Texas, and he's done a number of things that really benefit the communities that we serve. In particular, I want to highlight the American Rescue Plan and its expanded child tax credit. It's hard to overstate the extent to which that's benefiting families across the country and including in the Congressman's district that are struggling, and it's going to reduce child poverty by half. Additionally, he's also been a strong advocate of the CDFI fund at US Treasury. We are a community development financial institution, and so that funding is essential to our ability to serve communities. So thank you, Congressman, and I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Andy. And I want to thank you for your leadership as the founder and CEO of the Capital Good Fund. I also want to thank Greg Mangum, who's the Vice President of the Economic Mobility at United Way in the Dallas area. And thank you for being here with us. And thank you for first coming down to Texas and second of all, coming down to my district. As you know, my district starts off in the San Antonio area, goes in through the rural areas, goes down through Laredo, and then all the way down to the Valley, the Mission, the McAllen area. Large district. So this type of program that you're talking about, this funding is going to be a great access to our district. You know, what we're trying to do here today is to raise awareness of this non-for-profit resources that are helping Texans access loans and provide financial coaching to help them navigate through difficult times. Things are getting better, but there are still folks that need help. There are some what I call the hardworking, low, moderate income families that work hard, and sometimes at the end of the day, they might not have enough funding. You know, my parents were migrant workers making $300 a month for 8 children. So there were 10 mouths that my parents had to feed. So it was hard for them. Therefore, understanding what the low income, hardworking families have, sometimes they're unbanked or underbanked, which means that they might not have access to what we call the mainstream financial services. So what we're trying to do here in cooperation with Good Fund is to help those individuals. If you look at the Federal Deposit Insurance Survey, it's estimated that about 5.4 of the U.S. households are unbanked. And this was in 2019. And in Texas, we even had a higher amount. There was 7.7 of the households in Texas that were unbanked. So certainly there are some people that we need to provide access to affordable credit and sound financial advice so they can go ahead, get on their feet and continue. Now, what are we talking about? I mean, we're really talking about these loans that can provide assistance to folks that might need money to repair an automobile so they can go to work or take their children to school. They might need to buy a computer for their child, or they need a security deposit for an apartment, or just need some quick cash to buy food or whatever they might need. So this is something that will be beneficial to a lot of our communities. Now, I sit on the Appropriations Committee. I'm the only Democrat in Texas and the surrounding area in the Appropriations Committee. And we fund several things, education, healthcare, but there's one area that I've been working on with Mr. Quigley, Mike Quigley with me, and that is the U.S. Department of Treasury. That is the Community Development Financial Institution that basically has money. It has over $330 million. But this last week, or should I say last month, we added for FY22 an increase of $60 million extra on top of what we had currently. Now, it's not final. We got to work with our Senate, but we got to make sure that we work together to keep that money there. Also, Andy or Greg, you can also talk about the Rapid Response Fund, which is another source of funding that was in one of the relief bills that we have. So there are several things that are available. But I do want to mention a couple of things, and I'll say a few words in Spanish if you will allow me to do this. What type of loans are we talking about? What interest rates? We talked about some of the needs. There's really two types of loans that are available, and I'll let Greg and Andy get into the details. But there's what we call the regular loan at 5%. That can be, you can use that for some of the expenses that I mentioned. But there's also something that's very interesting. It is a immigration loan that might be at 12 to 15%. What is a immigration loan? What if you have somebody that wants to work on the paperwork to become a legal citizen, a naturalized citizen? They need to hire an attorney. They need some of the filing fees. They need some of the money so they can take the next step forward. So this immigration loan is going to be very helpful for the people that want to move on their status on the immigration process. So you have a regular loan and then the immigration loan itself. Now, finally, I'll say this in English, and then I want to say, if you will allow me, Andy and Greg, say a few words. Y Andy también habla español, habla buen español también. But I also want to mention, we passed, and this is one of the things I worked with Rosa DeLauro, who is our chairwoman for appropriations, and that is the child tax credit. The child tax credit is one of the most important things that we have done that's going to help children raise children from the poverty level. In fact, in my congressional district, 95.1% of the children in my congressional district, that's over 231,000 children, are going to will gain from this child tax credit. Over 95% of the children in my congressional district are going to gain from this. And again, without going into more of the details, I just want to say that this child tax credit is going to be something to help raise our children out of the poverty level. Unas palabras en español, y Andy también habla español. Lo que estamos hablando de aquí son préstamos para ayudar a las personas. Hay dos diferentes tipos de préstamos. Uno es un préstamo donde una persona puede usar el dinero para el depósito a un apartamento, lo puede para arreglar el carro o comprar una computadora para sus niños. Es un préstamo a 5%, 5% por el préstamo. El otro es un préstamo, se dice, para la inmigración. Si tenemos una persona que se quiere naturalizar como ciudadano y necesita dinero para el abogado o los gastos para el proceso, pueden sacar un préstamo, y está un poquito más alto, de 12 a 15%, pero es algo importante que Greg y Mangum quieren hacer para ayudar a la gente. Ahorita hay un poquito más de 5% de toda la gente en los Estados Unidos que no tienen acceso a un banco. Y en Texas un poquito de más de 7%. Es que este dinero, esta ayuda es para las personas que no tienen acceso para ir a un banco. Y por eso es muy importante para la gente que trabaja duro, pero no tiene suficiente dinero. Es como mis padres. Mis padres eran inmigrantes, 8 niños, y mi papá hacía $300 al mes para dar comida a 10 personas en la familia. Trabajaba duro, pero no había suficiente dinero, y es el tipo de persona que queremos ayudar. Las personas que no tienen acceso al banco pueden sacar ese préstamo, y también lo pueden dar entrenamiento para manejar el dinero mejor. Lo quiero dar las gracias. Una cosa más. Una de las cosas que hicimos también es el crédito para ayudar a los niños en mi distrito. El Child Tax Credit, como se dice en inglés, va a ayudar a más del 95.1% de todos los niños que tengo en mi distrito, de San Antonio, todo hasta Laredo, todo hasta el Valle y las áreas rurales. Es que estamos hablando que este Child Tax Credit, este crédito lo va a ayudar a más de 231,000 niños en mi distrito que lo van a levantar de la pobreza para tener una vida mejor a nuestros niños. Y con esto lo quiero dar las gracias a Andy y a Greg también. Y vamos a seguir a que vamos a tomar las preguntas en inglés y en español. Greg or Andy, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Muchas gracias. Yes, and when we get into the Q&A, like the Congressman said, we'll be happy to do the Q&A in English and Spanish. I just want to say a few words about what Capital Good Fund does, pass it off to Greg, and then we'll turn to Q&A. So thank you so much, Congressman, because I think what we found over the last 12 years, and I started Capital Good Fund in February of 2009 in response to the last crisis we faced as a country, which was the financial collapse. And one of the big things I've taken away during my time running a nonprofit is that loans on their own are not enough, and financial coaching to get a family out of poverty and into the middle class, nor is good public policy enough on its own. It's when you have a combination of good policy and good direct service provision that you can really uplift families. And so for us, the fact that there's things like the child tax credit and the stimulus payments combined with our loans that I'll talk about, you start to get a suite of services that can support families through crisis and then as they recover, moving into the middle class. So what does Capital Good Fund do? We're a nonprofit. Like the Congressman said, we're a CDFI, or Community Development Financial Institution, which is a US Treasury certification. And we're very unique in that we focus entirely on small dollar consumer loans and financial and health coaching for low to moderate income families, with a strong focus on Latino and Latina families and just communities of color in general. Specifically, we offer loans of $300 to $20,000 in Texas for the purposes that the Congressman mentioned. We are based in Rhode Island and we lend in 7 states. We started lending in Texas in November of last year. And the reason why we decided to go into the state is because we try to deal with the issue of predatory lending. And we define predatory lending as products that have interest rates over 36% and where the lender makes money when the borrower gets caught in a debt cycle. So, for example, in Texas, there are over 2,100 payday loan storefronts that do nearly $6 billion a year in volume. And the average interest rate is 664% on a payday loan. And auto title loans carry also triple-digit interest rates. So when we saw that need and we saw that there is no one offering an alternative at the rates of 5 to 16% that we offer, we decided to come in. Additionally, given our focus on immigrant communities, Texas is a state, of course, that makes a lot of sense for us. And one of the things that I've been blown away with is the welcome. We have received tremendous support from generous funders like United Way of Dallas, impact investors like the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation, community partners, and then also community members. And in fact, we've already done almost 600 loans for $500,000 in the state. And we have plans to significantly expand over the next year. If I can speak a little bit to our response to the pandemic, within a week, we were seeing hundreds of people coming to us saying, I need funds to bridge the gap between applying for unemployment benefits and the benefits coming in, or as kids were starting to do school from home, they needed to purchase technology. So we launched what we call the Crisis Relief Loan, and it ranges from $300 to $1,500 with a 3-month deferment period, so no payments, and then 12 monthly payments. And a couple things that are really unique about this. One is that we report to all 3 credit bureaus. So borrowers build their credit on average 75 points. The other one is that we have no other fees. There's no application fee, no closing fee, prepayment penalty, or even a late penalty. So it's a very consumer-friendly product. Additionally, we're very flexible in how we review the application, how we underwrite it. We understand that people are impacted by the pandemic to this day. So we look at a variety of factors, and we don't look at credit score. We look at the credit history, their banking history, or their prepaid card history, their overall financial picture. That allows us to have a higher approval rate and also a higher repayment rate. And in fact, we've done 7,800 loans across our footprint for almost $16 million with a 95% repayment rate, which we are very proud of. And then additionally, as the Congressman mentioned, we're offering the immigration loans throughout the state of Texas. And this is something that a lot of people don't realize, which is that there are all sorts of avenues for improving your immigration status, asylum, green card, family petition, et cetera, but it costs a lot of money. It can cost $15,000 to do a complicated case. And we know how much immigrants contribute to the community. The Congressman represents a very immigrant-rich district. And so we're very proud to offer this product in the state. So the last thing I want to mention is if someone wants to apply for a loan or for financial coaching, they can do that right on our website in English or Spanish at capitalgoodfund.org. It can be done on a basic smartphone, laptop, or tablet. And all of our client-facing staff are fluent in Spanish. We were going to have one of our clients, Veronica Daniels, join. Unfortunately, she had a health issue. So I'll just read a little bit of her story, just a few sentences, and then I'll turn it over to Greg. So Veronica is from Houston, and she found herself resorting to credit cards to pay for a lot of her everyday bills after she'd been laid off right at the start of the pandemic, which is the story we've seen of thousands of clients that have come to us. For 6 months, she worked at a lower paying temporary job before she secured her current position. But as you can imagine, the salary she was earning wasn't enough to support her and her husband, who's disabled, as well as her son who's in college. So that hurt her credit score, made it harder for her to access other loans. And she said, quote, "Sometimes you fall into hardship and it is what it is." The 5% interest rate she got on her loan is a fraction of the rate she was paying on another loan. It was a payday loan. And so she said, Capital Good Fund was amazing. They worked around my schedule. People should give them a chance. So again, people that want to apply can go to capitalgoodfund.org, and we have capacity to do thousands of loans throughout the state of Texas. Now I will turn it over to Greg Mangum, who's the Vice President of Economic Mobility at the United Way of Metropolitan Dallas. Greg.
All right, well, thank you, Andy, and good morning, everybody. So at United Way of Metropolitan Dallas, our mission is around creating opportunity and access for all of North Texas, but particularly in underserved neighborhoods that are majority people of color. And so we do that in the areas of health, education, and community financial stability. And in the financial stability space, we typically focus around both products, programs, and policies. And so, particularly the last several years, there's been a big emphasis for us in the area of credit. And as Andy mentioned, our area has a proliferation of, auto title lending and payday loans. And what we found in working with, our nonprofit network across the Dallas region is that many folks are getting caught up into these loans with no end in sight. They go into it thinking that it'll be a very short-term loan, but in fact, what happens is the loans roll over and the fees increase, and they find themselves in a cycle that they're just not able to get out of. And so, for several years, we were trying to, address this issue. Initially through some policy work with the city of Dallas and Dallas County that put some regulations and tighter restrictions around payday lending. That ordinance passed and has since been adopted by several cities across the state of Texas. But there was still the gap on the product side. And we have tried to work with, a number of, nonprofits and fintech companies to come up with some solutions. And it's been tough because our core sort of competency is not really in the banking or financial product space. And so what we found is as we were creating these, we just couldn't create the capacity and scale that were needed. And so that's why we were excited when we heard that Capital Good Fund was coming to Texas. And so we had some early conversations, and then when Capital Good Fund was able to launch last November, we connected with Andy and said, you know, hey, let's figure out how to partner together, particularly in the Dallas region. And so our role in this work has really been twofold. One is to provide some funding that really allows for these loans to be made in Dallas by creating a loan loss reserve fund that kind of mitigates some of the risk. The other piece is really helping to promote loans, these loans, and the availability of these loans across the Dallas region through our network of service providers and community organizations. So at United Way, we fund and support about 130 nonprofit organizations, but then we have an extended work with, you know, several community coalitions that represents, you know, hundreds of organizations and faith-based organizations and government groups. So being able to leverage that that network to get the message out is really kind of what we're focused on now. And so we're just really excited because we know, you know, the availability of credit just affects so many things. You know, most recently with the pandemic, it's been about getting very real, very quick assistance in the hands of people that really need it, you know, that are waiting on, you know, perhaps assistance through government programs such as, you know, rental assistance or the stimulus check or the child tax credit. So serving as a stopgap in that manner. The other big thing for us that, you know, really attracted us to the Capital Good Fund is the fact that all of these things help build credit. They report to the credit bureau. There's also, you know, options to provide financial coaching for folks that, you know, want that and need that may have more, you know, complex, you know, questions and challenges around their finances. And so it really is a great package deal because at the end of the day, it is important for folks to build their credit. You know, not only in the short term of having access, but for us at United Way, we are looking at, you know, long term of how, you know, we come out of this pandemic, how people get, you know, reskilled and reemployed. Part of that with employment is having a good credit score. And so helping build credit just helps folks succeed on a number of these levels. So like I said, we're very excited about the partnership. You know, we will, you know, working to continue to promote these loans and are just looking forward to seeing all the great results. So I will stop there and I think turn it back over to Andy.
Thank you so much, Greg. And yeah, I think this really highlights that, again, as I said before, you need good public policy, good direct service, and good community partners and funders. And I also want to highlight that the economic data is looking good, but the communities that we serve are still struggling. And so not only is a product like the crisis relief loan necessary, but things like the child tax credit, additional supports, we can't turn the corner and forget the extent to which the lowest income, most vulnerable families and communities are the first to be impacted by crises and the last to recover from them. So it's really important to keep focusing on their needs over the next months and years. With that, I would love to turn it over to any questions in the chat. And I see, Aisha, do you want to monitor the questions?
Yes, I can.
For Julia? All right, well, I do see, so I see a question in Spanish. It's ¿cuáles serían los requisitos que deben llenar las personas que buscaran un crédito para el tema migratorio? So the question is, what are the requirements for somebody that's looking for an immigration loan? So I'll start in Spanish. Nosotros, pues los requisitos son los siguientes. Primero, uno tiene que estar trabajando con un abogado o una organización comunitaria que pueda ayudar con los trámites. Es importante no ir a un notario o alguien que no ofrezca el servicio de alta calidad. Segundo, uno tiene que tener una fuente de ingresos o una cuenta bancaria o una tarjeta prepagada, porque nosotros basamos la decisión en los estados de cuenta, en el cash flow en los estados. Y bueno, aparte de eso, lo que nosotros hacemos es evaluamos los ingresos y los gastos de la persona para verificar que puede pagar los pagos mensuales. Y también intentamos ver si es probable que vayan a hacer los pagos basándonos en no el credit score, sino el reporte de crédito. Y ya, garantizamos una decisión en 2 días. O sea que es un proceso bien sencillo y muy flexible. So, in terms of requirements for an immigration loan, the first thing is you have to be working with an immigration attorney or with a nonprofit that provides support with the process, because there are a lot of so-called notarios and others that offer fraudulent or low quality service. So we want to protect the immigrant. The second thing is you have to have a form of income, because we're going to do an ability to pay test to make sure the loan fits within the borrower's budget or the applicant's budget. And then we review their bank statements or their prepaid card statements to look at how they manage cash flow. And then while we don't look at their credit score, we look at their credit history for trends and to see how likely it is that they will make the payments. Let's see. Another question we have is, some of your loans are quite small. What impact do they have on the lives of your clients? So it's true that they are very small, but when you think about the fact that 95% of our clients are low income, even $300 can make a huge difference. And one of the things to consider is that if you take out a $300 payday loan, you will very easily in Texas pay over $700 in interest and fees. And in our equivalent loan, it's $20. And one of the most stunning data points I've seen is that in America, a family that makes $25,000 per year spends as much on interest and fees, about 10% of income, as it does on food. So one of the impacts is that that's money, the money they save on interest is money that goes towards food on the table. There's also the 75-point average FICO increase. And then literally in many cases, our loans allow somebody to avoid repossession, eviction, all sorts of debt cycle, overdrafts, bankruptcy. So the impact is quite tremendous, even on such a small loan. Let's see, there's a question about how has the rise in the Delta variant impacted the demand for crisis loans. I'd love to actually see, Congressman, what are you seeing in terms of your constituents and the needs, particularly now with the Delta variant and where we are in this whole pandemic?
Certainly, thank you, Andy. Certainly, when you look at the border, and I'll talk about just border right now, counties and cities in their vaccination rates, we're doing a better job than the average that we see across the nation, and certainly higher than what we do here in the state of Texas. So there are folks that are doing what they're supposed to be doing. The mask, I always encourage people to wear their mask. Regardless of what some people might say that we shouldn't, we should wear the mask. As you know, there probably will be a booster shot that will be available next month in September for people that have got their vaccination. There'll be a booster shot. So what we're seeing down here is we're seeing our hospitals that are really, there's no space available. That is the ICUs. We have the building or the rooms and all the equipment. The problem is we don't have enough of the nurses and other responders to be there. And that's what's happening along the border itself. So therefore, if you're somebody who might not have the income, just keep in mind that, we got to make sure we take care of our health and then work with Capital Good Fund to make sure that if you need any extra help, we'll be available. But the Delta variant has had an impact in the fact that, as you very well know, 90 80+% of the people that are sick, most of them, 85, 90% in our area, are people that are not vaccinated. So again, this virus will hit you whether you're rich or poor, and the vaccines are available. The federal government, we put in billions of dollars, and a vaccine, as you know, usually takes 5 to 10 years so we can develop that vaccine. But we were able to develop that last year in less than 1 year because we had the best minds both in the civilian world and the military developing this vaccine. So we're asking people to stay safe because the last thing you want is to get sick and not have enough resources. And this is why the health of the community certainly affects the well-being of your family in so many ways, especially if it's the breadwinner, she or he. If he or she gets sick, then that affects everybody. So it's all interconnected, Andy, as you know.
Yeah, for sure. And I think with the Delta variant, it's a particularly fraught time for the people that we serve because we had assumed the economy was going to be reopened. And a lot of the supports that were available, like enhanced unemployment benefits, had started to be withdrawn, some of the mask mandates. And now you have some shutdowns or a lot of uncertainty. School districts now, maybe they're going to close down, go to virtual schooling. And our families, they don't have a lot of child support. They're trying to decide if we go back to schooling at home, how am I going to go to work and take care of my kids? Am I going to get laid off again? So there's a lot of uncertainty, and it just goes to show why we need to continue to provide the supports that I was talking about before. Oh, we have a question here. It's in Spanish. ¿Cuáles familias son las más afectadas económicamente por la pandemia? ¿Son los migrantes? So the question is, what families are the most affected, economically impacted by the pandemic? Is it migrants? Congressman, do you want to start?
Sí, cómo no. Bueno, el impacto de virus, de virus, lo va a afectar a la gente pobre, a la gente rica, a las personas que tienen papeles, o a las personas que no tienen papeles, ciudadanos o no son ciudadanos. Aquí en la frontera, ustedes saben que están entrando muchas personas de Centroamérica y otros países a los Estados Unidos, y de ahí depende, hay un porcentaje de esos inmigrantes que están enfermos o están positivos, y por eso es algo que necesitamos que entender, que muchas de estas personas vienen de países que no tienen el sistema de salud como tenemos aquí en los Estados Unidos, pero estamos haciendo todo para primero a los niños, cuidamos los niños inmigrantes como si eran niños de nosotros. Número uno, las personas que están con familias, hay unas que se regresan y muchas de ellas se quedan aquí, y hay muchos grupos que lo están ayudando, que lo están ayudando con los exámenes y con las vacunas. Y aquí los adultos, como ustedes saben, la gran mayoría se regresan abajo del título 42. Now, la otra cosa que debemos de entender es que tenemos muchos de los agentes que se han enfermado, los hombres y mujeres del Border Patrol CBP. Ayer estaba hablando con uno de los jefes del Border Patrol y un agente muy joven se murió hace poco, y cuando yo lo llamé, el jefe del Border Patrol estaba hablando con la familia del agente, un muchacho hispano joven que se murió. Es que esto lo está afectando a todos de muchas maneras, y por eso digo, toman la vacuna, la vaccinación, y usen las máscaras y que se cuiden mucho. Y como ustedes saben, parece que ya en septiembre vamos a comenzar a tomar el booster shot, otra vacuna, para pelear el virus que viene del Delta.
Yeah, and I'll start just in English and then I'll say it in Spanish. Just, I mean, the families most impacted by the pandemic are families that the pandemic has really exposed pre-existing inequities in our economy and society. So it's the low-income families, it's families that are immunocompromised or have other health issues. It's also families that work in direct service or frontline or in jobs that they can't do from home. And so they can't stay safe. And also they were the ones that had the most, they suffered the most from closings and shutdowns during the pandemic. And then it's families that don't have much liquidity. They don't have savings, they don't have access to credit or credit cards. Middle class, white collar workers have done just fine. And we know that the wealthy and the super wealthy have gotten significantly wealthier. So en cuanto a las familias afectadas por la pandemia, son las familias que tenían problemas antes, tenían problemas de salud, que no tenían acceso al crédito, al sistema financiero, y también la gente que trabaja en sitios donde no pueden hacer el trabajo desde la casa. Entonces ellos han sido afectados por cuando la economía ha sido cerrada y cosas así. Así que la pandemia ha demostrado la falta de igualdad que teníamos antes de la pandemia. All right, let's see. We have a question. What has the impact of a new administration been on the federal push for tighter restrictions on predatory lending? There's another question as well about the state interest rate cap in Texas. And I should note as well, if you have questions, please write them in the Q&A section. So in one of the other states where we lend, Illinois, they just passed a 36% rate cap that we were part of a coalition that was advocating for it. And like I mentioned before, Texas allows up to 660% APR on payday loans. There is not, I'm not aware of any effort at the statewide level in Texas to implement a 36% rate cap, which is the rate cap that applies to active duty military and which most advocates, community advocates push for. So in lieu of that, we are pushing for a national 36% rate cap that was just proposed by Rep. Chuy Garcia and Senator Reid and others in the Senate. So I don't know, Congressman, if you have a sense of the prospects of a national 36% rate cap.
Yeah, well, first of all, I don't know what the state is doing here, but as you know, they finished a regular session and right now they're in special sessions. And so they're voting on other things, and I don't think the governor is going to bring that up. I don't know. I will ask my friend Chuy Garcia from the Illinois area and take a look at what he has there.
Excellent. So yeah, that's what we're doing now, because in Rhode Island also we allow payday lending up to 261%, and we unfortunately failed in this session to pass a rate cap. So a national cap would of course supersede any successes or failures at the state level. Someone asked how long we've been lending in Texas. So we started lending in November, but it was, you know, kind of a soft launch. And then in January of this year, we really kicked off in full force. Let me see. Julia, are there any other questions I've missed so far? I see one about how we determine the interest rates. So as you see, we don't charge zero interest, we charge some interest. And really that's because we're a social enterprise. So our goal is to charge the lowest rate we can and still at scale generate enough revenue to cover our costs so that we can reduce our dependence on grants and donations, which can come and go. And when you think about the scale of the industry, we're talking about billions of dollars, it's important for us to be able to scale up to meet the need. And so that's why we do charge interest, just it is a much lower interest than what otherwise would be charged. Let me see. Any other questions for myself or the Congressman? Let's see, we have a question. What is the relationship with United Way? Greg, do you want to speak a little bit more to how we work together?
Sure. So, you know, it's really a partnership in the fact that, you know, we were looking for, you know, particularly an organization, a nonprofit organization, nonprofit lender like Capital Good Fund, that could really help us to scale product offerings in terms of safe and affordable loans, you know, to the low-income clients that we seek to serve. So, you know, really our relationship is twofold. It's one, United Way providing some funding that helps, you know, underwrite the risk of these loans, if you will, to be able to provide these loans at these very affordable interest rates. But the second piece is really about us working with our network of community organizations and nonprofit service providers to get the word out about these loans. And so I think what so often happens is because these payday lenders, particularly in the neighborhoods we serve, are just about on every street corner, and they're very visible. To be honest, they're very customer friendly. You know, they're open late at night, and you walk in and they're going to speak your language and help you the best they can. So it's trying to overcome that sort of marketing force that's in these neighborhoods to say, hey, there is a better alternative that's more cost effective, that won't get you in this recurring trap of ongoing debt. So that's really how we're working together, to advance these loans in the North Texas region.
Congressman, I'm curious, could you speak to some of the things that you're working on and some of your priorities over the next coming months and years, particularly as they pertain to the communities that we've been talking about?
Yeah, certainly, as I mentioned, I sit on the appropriations. So we are working on this current budget, and we've added monies for students so they can go ahead and the Pell Grant so they can go to school. We're looking at, of course, the CHIP program, was the Children Health Insurance Program, was something that's very, very, very important. I started the first pilot program in the state of Texas when I was in the state legislature, so that's very special to me. And of course, funding in general, but in fact, I was just looking at my notes. They're saying that we're going to start a caucus, Democratic caucus, so we can talk about the Voting Rights Act legislation that we'll be voting on next week. And then we're looking at also the reconciliation and the infrastructure bill that we'll be talking about next week. So finish the appropriations and this year, and of course look at the infrastructure and see what extra monies we'll be adding on the reconciliation. That's so subject to some debate both in the House and the Senate. But we got a lot of work because we want to get this economy. The economy is starting to get back. But now with this resurgence of the Delta virus, that's going to put a little hiccup on the good work that we were doing. So with that, I want to say, Andy, and of course, Greg, also, thank you so much, because I got to hop on to a caucus meeting with Nancy Pelosi and our leaders there and talk about infrastructure and the voting rights bill that we'll be voting on.
Thank you so much, Congressman.
And Andy, I want to say to you and Greg, thank you so much for the excellent work. And we certainly want to promote what you're doing here, the low interest loans to the unbanked individuals, the people that need it, and also the immigration loans. That's something very interesting. I like that. And we will certainly we will do everything to help you get the word out to my area from San Antonio, Laredo, down to the Valley area of Texas on that large district, a lot of areas. So we want to work with you on that.
Thank you so much, Congressman.
Thank you so much to all of you.
And before we wrap up, there was a question from Monica Navarro. You can go to your caucus meeting, yeah. So sorry, Monica, I just saw your comment in the chat. So you asked si los préstamos son para todos los tejanos de bajos recursos. So are loans for all low-income Texans? And yes, they are. Sí, bueno, son para todos, pero tenemos un enfoque en la comunidad de latina y de bajo ingresos específicamente. So yes. All right, well, if there are no other questions, thank you so much to everybody for joining. And, oh yes, thank you. So as you can see here on this slide, my contact information is there. If you'd like to apply for a loan or donate, you can do so on our website. And then we also encourage you to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook using our handles there. So thank you so much, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Craig.